Now, are we actually elevating sexuality to a core doctrine?
We do think this relates to the authority of Scripture, so that is a core doctrine.
We have so much in common with folks who are LGBTQ outside the church, and we need to begin to forge those partnerships within and beyond the walls of the church.
That man who died, who was burned in 1837. I would love to know that the city of St. Louis is doing something about that history.
Traffic disruptions and loud messages aren't the only things memorable about Black Lives Matter.
Some incidents of vandalism and things getting a little more violent. We advocate those types of tactics, smashing property windows and storefronts. Do we have the same level of outrage when a young Black person is killed?
We seem to be finding ourselves based on what we're against instead of centering on what we're for.
This is the state of InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, the U.S. branch of International Fellowship of Evangelical Students, apostasy scurrying the campuses of numerous colleges nationwide. But the question remains, how did it get this bad? Let's find out.
To understand the history of IVCF, we need to understand the first student Christian movement. In 1865, Scotland saw the formation of local student associations at the universities of Edinburgh and Glasgow. The cessation of Anglican exclusivity in Oxford and Cambridge in 1871 paved the way for the rise of non-denominational student clubs, influenced also by a shift towards a more secular environment within these venerable institutions. Despite this, Oxford and Cambridge retained a degree of social elitism, often distancing themselves from the mainstream evangelism of that period. The influence of distinguished students and faculty, known for their exceptional abilities, gradually rendered evangelical fervor acceptable within these academic circles. The visit of the celebrated evangelist Beauty Blackwood to Cambridge in 1877 led to the establishment of the Cambridge Intercollegiate Christian Union, which drew participation from Christian students across virtually all the college campuses. During Moody and Sankey's second tour of England in 1882, the CICCU courageously invited them to conduct an evangelistic campaign at the university. Despite the initial mockery and disruptive behavior from students, including throwing firecrackers and loudly interrupting the proceedings on Guy Fawkes Night, the subsequent gatherings were significantly more successful, contributing to the establishment of a triennial pattern for university missions. While progress in Oxford was less pronounced, a daily prayer meeting had begun as early as 1867. It wasn't until 1882, however, that the Oxford Intercollegiate Student Group was established, embracing a broader and more contemporary approach to faith, willing to introduce students to diverse religious perspectives. Meanwhile, in 1874, medical students from 4 London colleges formed the Medical Prayer Union, marking the first collaborative effort among student groups from multiple educational institutions. This period marked an increasing fervor for Christian unity and collaboration, transitioning from denominationalism to interdenominationalism. Notably, this trend was more prevalent in the United States, yet both regions witnessed the rise of voluntary organizations eschewing denominational ties. The initial formation of such groups focused on overseas missions, notably with the establishment of the London Missionary Society, followed by the founding of the Evangelical Alliance in 1846. The inception of the Young Men's Christian Association in 1844 and its female counterpart, the Young Women's Christian Association in 1854 were particularly pivotal. Both organizations championed an ecumenical outlook, embracing an international scope and a commitment to evangelism. It was within these Y movements in America that student initiatives first took shape. The YMCA debuted in America in 1851, and by 1856 boasted 205 associations across the continent. Dwight L. Moody, a prominent American evangelist, expanded his ministry beyond Chicago through affiliations with the YMCA. Around the same time, starting in 1857 at the University of Virginia, students across various campuses began forming campus YMCA groups dedicated to prayer, Bible study, and evangelistic endeavors, all student-led. Recognizing these developments, the leadership of the American YMCA and YWCA convened to address the burgeoning student movement. In response, they established a dedicated student department and in June 1877 formed the Intercollegiate YMCA, appointing Luther D. Wishart as the first college secretary. The momentum of the movement swiftly extended to other academic institutions, deepening its purpose and sense of mission. In the winter of 1885, at the invitation of D.L. Moody, a president of the CICU traveled to America. His sermons at Cornell University in January 1886 profoundly impacted John R. Mott, a 20-year-old Cornell student, inspiring him to commit his life to Christian service. Subsequently, Wishart persuaded Moody to convene a conference in July 1886 at Mount Hermon, Massachusetts, aimed at fostering Christian engagement in universities. The conference attracted 300 students, among them Robert P. Wilder, a Princeton student and son of missionary parents, who harbored a profound aspiration for a student missionary movement. On the conference's final day, encouraged to evangelize their generation, 100 students, later known as the Mount Hermon 100, vowed to pursue careers as foreign missionaries, signing a declaration of their commitment. This gathering marked the genesis of a dynamic, new student movement. Over the following year, Wilder and a colleague visited numerous colleges, encouraging a significant number of students to commit to missionary work. In 1888, the formal creation of the Student Volunteer Movement for Foreign Missions consolidated various student groups from the YMCA, YWCA, and Inter-Seminary Missionary Alliance, with John R. Mott assuming the role of chair. Mott, appointed college secretary of the YMCA in April 1888, emerged as a compelling evangelist, inspiring rational and heartfelt dedication among students. By 1888, around 5,000 students had pledged to missionary work abroad, with eventually 20,000 participating as missionaries. In Britain, the commitment to overseas missions received a significant boost from the Cambridge 7, academically and athletically gifted students who volunteered for the China Inland Mission. Following a series of annual summer conferences, the student volunteer movement initiated regular quadrennial conferences starting in 1891, extending to multiple countries, including the United States, Britain from 1896, and Germany from 1897, focusing on a global call to service. The burgeoning enthusiasm for overseas missions ignited a new visionary approach to outreach among university students. The student volunteer movement quickly captured the imagination of the academic community, urging the broader church to adopt a more expansive outlook. The movement's rallying cry, "The evangelization of the world in this generation," resonated deeply with students. A pivotal moment that captured widespread attention was the commissioning of 7 students from Cambridge, including the notable England cricketer C.T. Studd, for the China Inland Mission in 1884. This event highlighted the dynamic activities occurring within university settings. Students engaged in outreach efforts that extended to rural churches, beach evangelism, and missions in urban slums. Robert Wilder, pivotal in promoting the SVM, served as a traveling secretary, and after touring Britain between 1891 to 92, helped to establish the SVM. Following this, he and his Norwegian wife committed a decade to missionary work in India. He later held the position of International General Secretary of the SVM from 1919 to 1927. As the SVM expanded, it fostered a more comprehensive vision for student engagement that included Bible study, worship, outreach, and missionary training. Student groups worldwide, though connected by a somewhat loosely defined zeal for evangelicalism, came together under the SVM's banner. John R. Mott, influential in the movement, eschewed the idea of a standardized organization, preferring a more flexible and inclusive approach to uniting these diverse groups. Instead of attempting to organize the Christian students under one name and according to any one plan or organization, it would be better to encourage the Christian students in each country to develop national Christian movements of their own, adapted in name, organization, and activity to their own particular genius and character, and then to link these together in some simple and yet effective federation. This visionary framework facilitated the creation of a cooperative body that integrated several prominent student Christian organizations in North America. This coalition included the Student Volunteer Movement, the Intercollegiate YMCA, and the Interseminary Missionary Alliance of America, culminating in the formation of the North American Student Christian Movement. This union exemplified the collaborative spirit envisioned in the establishment of the World Student Christian Federation, aiming to enhance the efficacy and reach of student Christian initiatives across the continent. Similarly, in Britain, major student groups such as the Oxford Intercollegiate Christian Union and the Cambridge Intercollegiate Christian Union unified under the umbrella of the British Colleges Christian Union. This organization would later be rebranded as the Student Christian Movement, reflecting a broader commitment to engaging students across the United Kingdom in Christian fellowship and outreach, in alignment with the global movement's objectives. The establishment of the World Student Christian Federation was realized in 1895 during a gathering known as the Scandinavian Students' Meeting with a Christian Program in Vadstena, Sweden. This pivotal meeting saw the attendance of 6 leaders from the broader student Christian movement, including representatives from the pioneering groups, commonly referred to as the Student Christian Movement in mission lands. John R. Mott, a central figure in these developments, harbored a deep-seated expectation for the WSCF. His vision was for a federation that would not only unify student Christian groups globally, but also amplify their impact through collaboration and shared mission. This expectation was grounded in the successes and widespread engagement observed within the SVM, suggesting a promising future for the WSCF in fostering a global network of student Christian organizations dedicated to evangelism and service. The Federation will unite in spirit the students of the world. In doing this, it will be achieving a yet more significant result: the hastening of the answer to the Lord's Prayer, that they all may be one. Surely there has been recently no more hopeful development towards the real spiritual union of Christendom than the world's Student Christian Federation, which unites in common purpose and work the coming leaders of church and state in all lands. This expansive vision was not only ambitious, but also entirely justified, as evidenced by the rapid expansion of the movement. Following the formation of the World Student Christian Federation in 1895, John R. Mott and his wife Layla embarked on a 20-month global tour to promote the significance of this international endeavor. The couple focused on sharing the vital role of the WSCF in uniting college students worldwide to engage in evangelism, particularly among the social elite in countries like India, China, and Africa. This strategic approach helped establish the WSCF as a truly global movement. By 1897, the burgeoning federation solidified its structure by holding its first General Committee meeting and adopting a constitution in Williamstown, Massachusetts. International meetings became a regular feature thereafter, underscoring its mission to foster a world Christian movement. Meanwhile, Luther Wishart, the inaugural secretary of the American Intercollegiate YMCA, made significant inroads in Japan when he visited in 1889. His evangelistic efforts resulted in the establishment of 12 student YMCA groups. The first National Congress, attended by 500 Japanese students, was themed Christian Students United for World Conquest. Much of this momentum in Japan can be attributed to the earlier influence of Dr. William Smith Clark, who advocated for Christian unity among students at the agricultural college he founded, which eventually evolved into Hokkaido University. It is impossible to read literature of that first student Christian movement without being intrigued at its spiritual intensity, its broad vision, its sense of excitement, and its awareness of the opportunities for the Christian faith in the pre-war world. The movement's awareness of its potential impact is remarkable. While student movements often come and go, this particular movement sought a lasting presence within universities by forging strong connections with academic leaders. These close ties not only helped root the movement within educational institutions, but also linked it to theological education, making it a significant force within the broader Protestant community. Consequently, it contributed to the emergence of a new kind of Protestantism that was part of the larger evangelical revival, marked by a keen ambition to spread Christianity. This movement paralleled the broader imperialism of the Western world and embraced the emerging secular trends without fear, aiming to influence and transform society. The student volunteer movement focused on evangelism with a transformative societal goal, aiming for a deep-rooted Christianization of society, not just superficial changes. While this mission was intertwined with the imperialism of the era, which was fundamentally liberal and optimistic about perfecting the world, the association was considered and reflective. Adherents of the day revised traditional biblical interpretations and were hopeful about the transformative potential of Christianity, believing that both the national flag and the Bible could collaboratively reform society. This movement also embraced a philosophy that encouraged tolerance and acceptance of diverse peoples and lifestyles, positioning Christianity within the new liberal values. The aim was a unified Christian world, achieved indirectly through a pervasive spread of love and justice. The expansion of the InterVarsity movement beyond Britain greatly benefited from the pioneering efforts of Dr. Howard Guinness and his supporters from British universities. This expansion was facilitated by the fact that the English-speaking world traditionally sent its brightest students to the United Kingdom for education. The influence of the pre-international fellowship of evangelical students era extended even to non-English speaking regions. For instance, Guinness held meetings in Spain in January 1933, just before the Spanish Civil War broke out, a challenging time to initiate student work. His travels didn't stop there. After visiting Australia, he went on to India, and in 1936, He spoke to student Christian association groups in South Africa before returning to India. Before his ordination into the Anglican ministry in 1938, Guinness made several more visits across Europe, interacting with a network of European student movements that were yet to fully integrate with their new counterparts. This integration was a delicate process. In 1934, Robert Wilder, longtime secretary of the SVM, threw his enthusiastic support behind the burgeoning movement. This endorsement was crucial. Although not as famous as John R. Mott, Wilder remained a figure emblematic of the SVM's original spirit and continued to inspire students with his passionate speeches. After retiring from the SVM in 1927, Wilder moved to Egypt to serve as the executive secretary of the Near East Christian Council. A missionary in Cairo handed him a copy of the new IVF magazine, reigniting his passion for student ministry and alleviating some of his prior disappointments. His reinvigorated interest led him to reach out to the IVF, and upon learning of his identity, Douglas Johnson, a strategic thinker and the movement's secretary, invited him to become an honorary vice president of the IVF. In 1933, having retired to Norway with his Norwegian wife, Wilder delivered a compelling address at the University of Oslo titled "Some Steps to Certainty," openly rejecting liberal theological perspectives. Meanwhile, the British IVF, having learned as early as 1930 of an evangelical student movement in Norway, invited Wilder to speak at their Easter conference in Swanwick, Derbyshire, in 1933. This reunion was joyously received, connecting enthusiastic, missionary-minded students with an esteemed missionary statesman. Wilder returned to England in 1935, speaking at the 8th IVF Conference, where he introduced a new rallying cry to replace the old SVMs: "Evangelize to a finish, to bring back the King." During Wilder's tour, he engaged with various student Christian movement groups. However, his deteriorating health eventually compelled him to cut the tour short. Howard Guinness stepped in to replace him, but his approach differed markedly. Guinness's fervent criticism of the SCM's methods and ideologies made him unpopular among these groups. In a notable instance from his 1934 visit to England, Wilder was accompanied by two Norwegians, Carl Friedrich Wisløff, a theological student, and Wisløff's fiancée, Inge Brun, who was also Wilder's niece. Their presence underscored the personal connections and international ties that enriched the fabric of the movement, illustrating the deeply interconnected nature of these early evangelical efforts. The enthusiastic discussions between Wilder's Norwegian guests and Douglas Johnson about the evangelical movement in Norwegian universities sparked a significant initiative. Wisløff proposed that the British and Norwegian movements should establish regular exchanges to foster closer ties and mutual growth. This suggestion led to the organization of an international conference in Oslo, Norway, in September 1934. The event drew a notable British delegation that included 6 individuals, among them Howard Guinness and Douglas Johnson. Robert Wilder resumed his role as a key speaker, highlighting his ongoing influence in the movement. The conference was further enriched by the inclusion of representatives from neighboring countries. The Norwegians extended invitations to delegates from Finland and Sweden, and there were attendees from Denmark, Germany, Hungary, Latvia, and Estonia who were in Oslo to plan a united summer gathering for Northern European students. One of the most impactful moments of the conference was the series of addresses by Ole Halsby, who spoke on the hour of God. Halsby's profound message underscored that in God's hour, something always happens. We are now in the hour of God, It is an unspeakable privilege to move forward in God's time. His words resonated deeply, emphasizing the timeliness and divine sanction of the burgeoning student movement. Halsby also clarified that the formation of this new movement was not intended as a divisive schism, but rather as a timely response to a calling. This perspective helped to unify the attendees and inspired a collective commitment to advancing their evangelical mission across Europe. We did not wish to start something new. We desired only to work on the old lines on which Christian student work had been run from the beginning. Right from the beginning, our program has been the old, full gospel, preached for revival, conversion, and new life in service for our Lord, at home and abroad in the mission field. The Oslo Conference catalyzed meaningful collaboration among the participants. Inspired by the discussions and the sense of a shared mission highlighted by Ole Halsby's compelling addresses, the delegates moved forward with practical steps to solidify their cooperation. A draft for the constitution of an international conference of evangelical students was prepared, laying the groundwork for a more structured and unified approach to their collective efforts. Additionally, a small committee was formed with the task of organizing another international conference. This committee was tasked with not only planning the logistics of the upcoming event, but also ensuring that the momentum gained in Oslo would continue to grow and influence more student groups across different nations. This strategic move played a big role in expanding the reach and impact of the evangelical student movement globally.